right, it looks like we're live, and we welcome everyone to the November 28th, 2018 meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Utah Transit Authority. I'm the chair, Carlton Christensen, joined by my colleague, Beth Holbrook. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance and ask Kathy Griffiths if she'll lead us in that, and then following which we'll have a safety first minute from Dave Garris. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, trustees. Always go with the threes out on our safety minute. You have the safety poster for November behind you. Since Trustee Christensen mentioned the garage picture that we sent out, the weekly safety message last week was housekeeping. Very important things to make sure you keep free from clutter, make sure you have openings, emergency exit, and that you use your ladder safely as you're going up and down to get rid of all the clutter in the house. So we sent out a weekly message. We have this weekly poster. And though in my house you cannot officially start celebrating Christmas until the 1st of December, we already have the 12 days of safety posters up on our rail tracks lines. Just a couple of them. Take one of your earbuds out as you're crossing the tracks so you can hear. Hold hands, stand behind the yellow, and then use our crossings when you're going to and from the railroad station. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dave. I'm going to have to try the holding hands with my wife. That'll convince her that that's a good and safe thing to do. So thank you. We'll next go to our general public comment period. Bob, do we have some public comment?
We do. Our first speaker is George Chapman.
Okay, George. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
You should thank me after I'm speaking.
We're always grateful for the public comment.
Oh, you shouldn't encourage me. Okay, first of all, I'm George Chapman, and Mr. Chairman, or whatever you want to be called. I'm upset that the budget has debt reduction. I already sent you an email about this. Debt reduction really should be that money should be spent on service increase. You want UTA to look good, especially now after the last few years, and the best way to do that is show that you're providing extra service with the extra money you're getting starting in January. And that's really important. You should not wait 2 years before increasing service. If you wait 2 years, you're going to find out that taxpayers are really, really upset, and they think it's gotten worse. Also, I'm upset that the grant applications you're sending to the federal government are not public. One of the requirements for federal funding is broad public support. You do not have broad public support if those grant applications are secret. They were secret because we protested a couple of things, and one of the reasons we stopped your grant applications at the federal government, and I know because I talked to Assistant Secretary Hill a couple of years ago about it, if you're not going to release the grant applications, we can stop your grant application. You need broad public support. So I'm asking you to release the grant applications. Also, your server that provides GPS to the apps is having a problem. Heads up, the latency is like 10 minutes. It's ridiculous. Also, I asked that you interface with Salt Lake City and let them know some of the plans that they're proposing have not gone through Title VI analysis. And they should, because they're going to get a reality check and well after they've made a decision, and that's wrong. I also think that State Street and Redwood Road should have priority on expansion of service in Salt Lake City. Those are the routes that are most used. They're like 3,700 passengers a day. The other routes have much, much less ridership. They're crowded. Redwood Road and State Street are crowded. I've seen people with 2 wheelchairs and 4 strollers on State Street. They need more frequency, and that should be priority. I'm asking you to tell Salt Lake City, you're the experts. I'm asking you to tell Salt Lake City where the expansion should be, not their wishes and dreams, because they have totally, in my opinion, unrealistic expectations. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next.
Our second speaker is Claudia Johnson.
Welcome.
Thank you.
For being here.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to make my comments. I also appreciated Jim sitting down with, or Steve sitting down with me last time and straightening me out, but helping me understand a little more that I didn't quite understand, but we still may not agree. But anyway, that's what life is all about. Last year you had the Christmas free riding day, and it was great. The problem is I kept hearing from everyone was, why don't they tell us in advance? We can plan family activities, we can do, but tell us in advance that in 2 weeks or in 1 week or whatever, instead of just a few days before, because that would make it a family activity and a family opportunity to do something. The other thing is maybe have a family day. And how you do that, I don't know. I don't know if you turn around through the schools, because that's where most families are. But you have some people, I'm a family of one, there's some families of two. So I don't know how to deal with that. I don't know. Because I know you get a lot of free riders that like to just ride and get out of the inclement weather. The other thing is I have a lot of people that get on the train, get down to somewhere south and get off, and if they're not there by 6:30, they lose their last bus. Doesn't matter what time of year, they have the last bus is gone. And so they have to go walk 2 miles, or someone may offer them a ride, which has happened many times. Sometimes they've been kind of nervous because they're students from out of the country living in somebody's home. And so they're used to walking, but it's kind of scary when you're still new in a country. The other thing is maybe we can turn around, we, UTA, I guess I feel it is we, I'm part of it, as have extended hours, especially during the month of December on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, and maybe extend primarily some areas that have been ending at 7:30 or 8 o'clock to extend it further, to allow people to come down and go shopping. Those people like to go shopping. They like to see the Christmas programs. They like to see their children that are on the Christmas program, and they want to make it an event. And maybe, again, it's the end of a week, so they're not going to conflict with schools and programs and stuff that way. So that's something to think about and to consider. I realize that it's more expense, and you have to look at all the pieces and puzzles and fit this together so it's a big picture. But it needs to be considered, and I appreciate having my opportunity to tell you to reconsider. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
When you said South End, are you talking like Utah County South End or Salt Lake
I'm
County
talking from about 4,500 south.
Okay.
At that point, they have going out to West Jordan, or to Kearns, and Hunter. Hunter, does that exist anymore?
It doesn't. In that
It did when I was
community,
growing
right?
up, but it's terminology. But anyway, a lot of these places, and it's growing out there.
Yeah.
We're not meeting those needs. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Any additional?
And I have one internet comment.
Okay.
I would like to report that the driver of the red line at 7:43 p.m. on Friday was extremely rude as to not wait 10 seconds from when he arrived at the historical Gardner exit. I just watched him pull up, stop for the briefest time, and even watched me run toward the doors and then took off too quick for me to board the tracks. He should get at least a reprimand, one very frustrated rider. That was from Kim Manos. And those are all the comments I have.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Let's see. At this point, we'll look to a motion to approve our minutes of public hearing report of November 14th, 2018.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from November 14th, 2018 as written.
And I guess technically, are you calling it minutes or meeting or hearing report?
Oh,
Am
sorry.
I calling it the wrong thing?
I think I did, actually. My apologies.
Okay, sorry.
My apologies. I'll start over. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the November 14th, 2018 board meeting and public hearing report as written.
Second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? The motion passes. We'll next go to our September 2018 financial report, Bob.
Thank you. Before we get started, just mention that this dashboard has been in existence for a few years now. As you look at what we do with the dashboard and with our monthly financial report, if you have other ideas of what needs to be included on the dashboard or the monthly financial report, just let me know and we can make those corrections. So again, the monthly dashboard looks at some of the key items such as our revenue, sales tax fair revenue, our operating expense. Then we calculate the investment per rider, and then we look at that after we've adjusted for fuel price. That was a much bigger adjustment when we budgeted $3, $3.30 per gallon, and we're paying $2 per gallon. And so that's part of the history behind that adjustment. Then we report the diesel fuel price because that is a fairly large number for us. We show the ridership, and you'll see that ridership this month is actually greater than last year. A lot of that's the effect of the UVX coming into play, and we're seeing that our variance is actually shrinking from the prior year on a year-to-date basis. And then we show comparison to CNG, so you can look at CNG versus the diesel price as we contemplate moving more towards CNG and diversifying our fuel. And then we just show the debt that's there. And there's a couple of charts showing ridership trends and then our sales tax trends, budget versus actual last year and what we're seeing this year. That is a quick view through the dashboard. You'll see the red circles and green circles. You're familiar with those kind of reports.
Bob, can I ask you about the debt service?
Sure.
I would think that debt would be known from a budget standpoint. How does it sort of have a variance from the budget?
Well, it's a variance from the prior year.
Oh, prior
That's
year.
a prior year number. And so this year, I believe we're paying about $10 million more in principal than in the prior year. And you'll see that we're ramping up on our principal payments every year for the next several years. Give a little more information on sales tax. This is through October 31st. We just got our payment or information yesterday. So we'll include that on our next report. But overall, the far right column is overall 7.6% year over year, divided up into the various counties. Obviously, Salt Lake and Utah County, which represent about 78% of our revenue. Never do math in public. 78% of it, 8.2%, 8.4%. And then the other counties, you can see those percentages too. The November payment was up again, so these numbers will be a little bit higher next month.
Is the box elder figure, does that, any thought as to why that drops, or is it just a small enough market that
it's a small enough market that if someone chooses to come to Salt Lake instead of there, or I don't know that area that well.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have a question?
That was my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then we look at expense two different ways. This is by mode or by category. Administration, these are millions of dollars. $3 million under budget. Paratransit, we're 1.9. Maintenance way, 1.4 million. And bus, 1.6. Where we're over budgets, commuter rail, that's due to some of the parts expense with our rehab work that's going on, as well as diesel fuel. Diesel fuel, you saw we were about 20 cents over budget, so commuter rail is one of the big users of diesel fuel. That accounts for about 400,000 of that, and parts is about 400,000. And we can provide more detail on this if you would like it.
Mr. Charles?
Yeah, please.
Bob, just a quick question. So light rail, why is that slightly? Is that also due to infrastructure improvements of some
Sure,
kind?
there's two things actually. There's wages and benefits, we're about $400,000 over budget, And then our services are about an equal amount under budget. So those have almost netted each other out. And so, if we go in and look at it by cost center basis, you'll see that in some of these we have savings in lots of cost centers, and there'll be a couple of cost centers that are over. And then the same thing on looking at it by line item, and we group a bunch of line items into these. So the bottom two columns, wages and benefits and services, were almost a little bit over 7 million to the good there. But if you look inside wages and benefits, we're over on overtime by about 600,000, and we're over on non-operator time, about 1.9 million. And our regular wages are under budget by 5.8. So those offset to get to that $3 million number. And then in the services, the largest categories there are professional and technical. We're about 1.8 million under budget, and other services about 1.5 million. And then van pool maintenance is about 400,000. The rest of them offset pretty much. On the utilities, that's almost all propulsion power on the tracks line. On the fuel, most of that's diesel. On parts and warranty recovery, we've got a program where we have warranty on lots of vehicles and parts, and so we have a group who goes out, and if there's still warranty, we try to get the warranty, and we're about $500,000 over budget in that we've collected more. And so that reduces our expense.
Do you have, and I realize this is end of September, and do you have any sense whether these trends sort of continue on in October, or they're unique?
Yeah, they generally do continue on a little bit. The light rail's the one where, since we're doing some capital work, sometimes it hits the operating budget, and then we move it over to the capital budget. So that one has the most variance. But these typically stay about the same.
Okay. All right.
And that is a quick view of the financial statement report.
Let's see. Entertain a motion to accept the financial report.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the September 2018 financial report.
Second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. We'll next go to some items. Next up is a resolution regarding amending the bylaws of the Utah Transit Authority. And Lisa, do you want to, first of all, Lisa, do you want to talk to us about some of the changes that maybe were in an earlier draft that came out of comments from the advisory board, and
Sure.
or other discussions that might be pertaining to the bylaws?
Sure. So on November 14th, the advisory board considered the bylaws that were drafted, and they suggested that the bylaws be amended to provide or revised to provide for the participation of alternates when members of the advisory board were not able to attend. So the bylaws were revised to reflect that recommendation. So they've been revised to provide that alternates can participate in meetings, they can make motions, they count towards a quorum, and they can vote. And I should also note that they were also revised to provide or require alternates to submit a financial disclosure and sign a code of conduct each year as well, since they'll be participating in meetings.
Okay.
And that was the extent of the changes.
Okay, good. Barbara, any comment on these bylaws?
No.
We'll come back to any discussion or entertain and I guess we do this by roll call, correct? But let me go, is there any other discussion?
I didn't really have any discussion, but I did want to say that I thought that the discussion that the advisory board had was pretty thorough, because that obviously that is a topic that has value to the public. So with that said, I'd like to
Roll call.
oh.
And I would just add to that comment that one of the interesting challenges is the advisory board can't really move on until we adopt the bylaws and give them some structure in which they can choose their own leadership and go forward with that. So that discussion was helpful, and we anticipate that they'll meet here shortly and move forward in their work. So this will give some structure that will allow them to do that. So I guess with that, we'll do the roll call.
Trustee Holbrook, sorry.
Aye.
Trustee Christensen.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Next step is a resolution authorizing the sale of real property, also known as the Orem Bus Transfer Center. And Paul Drake, do you want to come forward and give us a brief overview of this particular item?
Well, Mr. Chair, Board of Trustees, thank you. I'm Paul Drake. I'm the Senior Manager of Real Estate and Transit-Oriented Development here at UTA. Here to talk about the disposition sale of a property at the soon-to-be replaced Orem Transfer Facility. Do I have control? Oh, perfect. The facility is located near the University Mall in Orem, just north of University Parkway and off of 800 East. You can see it there on the exhibit in the red. UTA owns roughly an acre of property, which is served as the bus facility for Utah County routes in that area. That function is being relocated to the Provo Intermodal Center at the end of the Front Runner line and part of the UVX project. We had the property appraised. And it came in at $815,000. This was our asking price when we went to go advertise the property. Back in May, we brought this property to the Board of Trustees to ask the board to declare it surplus and to allow us to advertise the property for public bid. The board did approve that. And now we're back to present the highest and best offer that we've received. Not shown here is that this property was purchased with some federal money, and so we needed to seek FTA approval. We did receive that back in August to dispose of the property. The highest bid came to us from University Mall Shopping Center, which is a subsidiary of Woodbury Corporation. They bid $901,500 with a leaseback provision for up to 12 months. The first 9 months would be free. We needed that because we're going to use some of the proceeds of this sale to help pay for the new facility at the Provo Intermodal. There were other good bids, but this one netted the highest value to the agency. So staff recommends that the Board of Trustees accept the terms of the purchase and sale agreement as has been presented, that they authorize the executive director and staff to dispose of the property per the terms of that agreement. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, just a couple, and this is probably due to my lack of familiarity. Is it an open process? I mean, obviously it's an open process, but is there any preferential to joining property owners? Obviously the mall owner is the joining property, if I looked at the map correctly.
That's correct. They are adjoining.
Do they get like a first right of purchase, or not necessarily?
No, this was just strictly an open bid. Anybody who came in with a bid was treated the same.
Okay. And then I guess it sounds like there's a transition piece. Is the Provo site up and running? It's still under construction?
It is not up and running, but there are plans to build that. Like I said, we'll probably be using some of these funds toward that facility. We expect it to be under the 9 months before it's up in operation.
It'll continue to be used then for a
Correct.
period of time, and hopefully within a 9-month window.
Yep. That's what we were hoping for in a buyer, is that we would be able to hold on to it for some time after the sale.
Any questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Paul, I just had a quick question. So
Sure.
Is there any contingencies in case it does extend past the 9-month period?
We go, let me back up real quick to those terms. They're willing to give us 12 months, so that would be an additional 3 months beyond that, but it's $6,000 per month. Even including that in the price, reducing our net, it's still higher than the other bids if we were to go the whole 12 months. They do need to put some kind of sunset on that because they will need to use the property at some point, but this, in our estimation, is pretty generous.
Does that give us ample time to complete the build out? Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Bob, any public comment on this?
We do. George Chapman.
Thanks, Paul.
I've had an ongoing argument about using one-time sales fee revenue for anything else other than service increases. And I wanted to explain why you should be using this sale money for service increases. When you increase service, if you do it right, and it's a complicated process, but if you do it right, the synergy of a more robust system is going to increase fares revenue, not just on the expanded service at bus or hour span of service. It's going to increase fare revenue throughout the system because you have a more robust bus system. So I recognize that one-time fees should not be used for service increases, but if you do it right, the synergy of a more robust bus system should allow that. Again, it's a complicated process. It has to be fine-tuned, but if you do it right, you could easily get 20 or 30% more ridership revenue than you expect because it's system-wide. A good example is if you increase span of service, like Claudia was mentioning, after 6:30 buses stop. But if you add a couple more buses after that, you're going to get more people riding the whole system because that's what they want. They want service. If you don't have service, they're not going to ride it. And that's the reason why you should use one-time service revenue or fee revenue from selling property. And you do it a lot, but you should use it for service increases, please. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Any other discussion? If seeing none, we'll ask for the roll call vote.
Trustee Holbrook?
Aye.
Chair Christensen?
Aye.
Thank you. It's unanimous.
Our next particular item is, let's see, is also a real estate item, a resolution authorizing the purchase of real property. And we'll come back to Paul Drake.
All right.
Where is parcel 137A and 137E?
All right. Thank you again. As you're aware, the UVX system has been up and running for some time. In the real estate department, we're looking to finalize still some of the leftover property transactions. Also, as you can guess, that hasn't held up operations, but we're just trying to finalize negotiations with some of these property owners. This one that we're bringing in front of you today, parcel 137, is one of those. We've reached an agreement with the property owner, which is Ashley Furniture, and the amount of the transaction has required us to come before the board for approval. Sorry, I keep forgetting I'm in charge of the slide. Anyway, so the seller, as I said, is the Ashley Real Estate or Ashley Furniture. The property is going to be used as right-of-way for our bus rapid transit system in Utah County. We're purchasing just over 11,000 square feet in fee of property for right-of-way, and then 21,400 plus square feet for a construction easement. Our appraisals came in, as you can see from this slide, very differently. Ours is just under $300,000 and theirs is almost $660,000. I understand that this is somewhat common in the process. We met with them several times and ended up in mediation where we were discussing the differences of those opinions. In value, their appraisal captured some of the costs not contemplated in our appraisal, such as a sign. Their appraisal was newer. So during mediation, it's a little back and forth, and this is, again, common, and ended up with kind of a split the baby solution. Final price that they agreed to, and as expected, was somewhere in between the two appraisals, and you can see it there at the bottom. It's $500,000, which is a little over $200,000 administrative settlement from where we were at initially.
Tell me about the administrative settlement. I apologize.
An administrative settlement is when we go in, all of these are federally funded.
Okay.
And so the FTA looks at our appraisal. If they approve that appraisal and we end up spending any more, then any additional is considered an administrative settlement. And again, this is not an uncommon scenario where the property owners, their value of the property is different than our value, and we come somewhere in the middle. We feel that this is a fair price for the property given the negotiations back and forth. They gave a little, we gave a little, and this ended up being a fair resolution for both parties.
Is the construction easement just a temporary easement, or is that permanent?
It's temporary, just during the term of the construction.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you have questions?
Any other questions?
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate that.
Sure.
I just had a question, just a clarification in my head. So when we do an initial appraisal, we then have to get the FTA to understand where that is at, and that's why there's this delay between, because you mentioned that their appraisal's newer. Is that typically why that results, or can you kind of like maybe just detail that a little bit for me?
Sure. My guess is your guess is correct. Yeah. So we'll go in at the first of the program when we go in there, and we'll get an appraisal. We'll figure out how much we figure it's going to be, and then once they're notified that we're going to be coming in and have to take some of their property, they'll get their appraisal. So there is a little gap there. It's not going to be significant, but it does come into play, especially in a market like we've seen over the last several months. Other things, probably the more significant on this one is just that some of the appraisal on our end didn't capture all of the things that their appraisal captured. The signs out there have been an expensive issue for a lot of the purchases that we've made. And so that came into consideration when we were mediating. Also just opinions of value are going to vary between one appraiser and another. Anyway, we looked at both appraisals. Both of them are valid, but they did the same, looked at ours, and that's why we ended up somewhere in the middle.
So just in other words, this is typical in a market where it's a strong sales market, and also with the delay in terms of getting the FTA involved, and that's kind of a typical scenario because that's a big swing. But another question: if the calculations of the appraisal didn't include the signage, is that something that we're going to incorporate in the future to make sure that we capture that?
We try and capture everything up front. But yes, I mean we look at that up front if we know that it's going to happen. This one, from what I understand, wasn't contemplated because at the time we didn't think we were going to have to move the sign. Anyway, so it's not included, etc. There's every single parcel has different circumstances, and we have to take our best educated guess at the time when we give the scope to the appraiser.
Thank you.
Bob, any public comment on this particular?
I don't have any other public comment on any of the additional items.
Any additional? Okay, thank you. Then we'll go to roll call.
Quick point of order. We need a motion first.
That's a good point. I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution R 2018-11-03, authorizing the purchase of real property parcels 137A and 137E.
Second. With that, I will do the roll call.
Trustee Holbrook.
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another point of order, we need to re-verify the motions and votes for the first two resolutions.
Oh, okay.
So if we could just go through the process again,
Sure.
make a motion and vote.
Sure, that was probably an oversight on my part. We'll go back to, I guess, the resolution amending the bylaws, correct?
Yes.
Correct? For the Utah Transit Authority, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve our 2018-11-01, the resolution amending the bylaws of the Utah Transit Authority.
Second. We'll go to roll call.
Trustee Holbrook.
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
I'll also now entertain a motion regarding resolution R2018-11-02, authorizing the sale of real property. Sale of real property, the Orem Bus Transfer Center.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve that resolution R 2018-11-02, authorizing the sale of real property, the Orem Bus Transfer Center.
Second. Roll call.
Trustee Holbrook.
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you for the correction, and we'll get it down next time. So, on to contracts and change orders, and it looks like, Eddie, we have you up first in regards to a resolution authorizing the execution of a contract with Michelin North America for the lease of bus tires.
Hello, I'm Eddie Cummins, current acting VP of Operations, Capital and Assets, and I have a few contracts for you today. The first one, as you mentioned, is the resolution authorizing execution of contract with Michelin North America, Incorporated, for lease of bus tires. Lease of tires and service for buses, this includes our fixed route, flex, and paratransit buses. So we're talking about a total of 626 buses, and thinking about the number of tires that they have. This total contract amount is for $5,049,185. This contract amount is for 5 years. That's a 3-year contract with 2 1-year options. Any questions?
Yeah, when I first saw that, I thought leasing tires, usually on a end of a lease, you either turn it back in or, and sometimes in capital leases, you get to keep the item afterwards. And why would you lease a bus tire, I guess?
So I thought the same thing when I first came to UTA. And what's interesting about it, it's whether you buy the tire, you purchase it outright, or you pay for what you use. And so we do an analysis, based on what it would cost if we were to purchase the tires outright and inventory them and have the labor that does the mounting, the balancing, that type of thing, or if we lease the tires and let Michelin have their own technicians that does that work. And it comes out to about $520,000 a year savings. And the real savings comes from labor and inventory cost.
Okay. So you're basically really almost leasing the service, and that service includes, they bring the tire along with them.
They do, and so we have our different business units. So you've been up to Ogden, been out to the outlying sections, right? So what they'll do is the tire shop is at the Meadowbrook facility, and they do all the mounting and balancing and everything there. Then they'll deliver the tires on wheels up to the outlying sections or whatever bus garage it is, and then our technicians will take it from there and put them onto the buses.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
No, you answered mine. You asked mine, actually.
Okay.
Awesome.
I thought lease was strange.
All right. And we don't have any particular comment, if I understood you right, Bob, and so I'll entertain a motion on this particular contract.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve R 2018-11-04, resolution authorizing execution of the contract with Michelin North America for the lease of bus tires in the amount of $5,049,185, 5-year contract.
Second. Roll call?
Trustee Holbrook,
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Eddie, you want to go to the next item, a resolution authorizing the execution of a contract with Stantec Architecture for professional engineering services on the Depot District building.
Thank you. This contract is for architectural and engineering services for bidding and construction phase service for the Depot District Clean Fuels Technology Center. Total contract amount is $2,220,059. And just a little bit of background on this project. This is something you may or may not be familiar with. It's been in the process for a long time. The original design of the Depot District was completed approximately 2 years ago by R&L Architects. About a year ago, Stantec acquired R&L Architects. Lucky for us, the original architects are now working for Stantec, so that's a good thing for us. The original design has sat on the shelf for probably about the past 2 years. So really what this is doing is this new contract with Stantec will provide a freshening up of the design plans. They'll answer design questions during construction, assist with evaluating change orders and engineering proposals, and assist with construction oversight. So.
So did they still though have to, even though they were an assumption of the old firm, did they go through a normal open procurement process, or how did we choose them?
So this is a sole source.
Sole source. Okay, sole source.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I assume that's because of their familiarity with the project.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. The same team being able to, that had designed and stamped the drawings, being able to be available for this additional work.
Okay. Any questions?
I don't have any questions. I just had kind of a comment. I'm obviously, my personal background, I'm excited about a Clean Fuels Technology Center in general, so I think that this is going to be really, really valuable. And I wanted to thank you for the explanation on that. So that's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you.
Having no public comment, I'll entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we grant approval to the resolution R 2018-11-05, authorizing execution of the contract with Stantec Architecture, Inc. for professional engineering services for the Depot District.
Second, we'll roll call.
Trustee Holbrook,
Aye.
Chair Christensen.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item up is resolution R2018-11-06. Resolution authorizing the execution of a contract amendment with Stadler Rail for the extension of their lease agreement at the Warm Springs facility. Paul.
Hello again. Okay, so just over 2 years, UTA has been leasing some space within our Warm Springs facility just north of here to Stadler Rail for the manufacture of rail cars. That was a publicly procured lease agreement. They had to compete for that space. They won per those terms. The lease has expired, and I'm here to just discuss a proposed extension while they complete their permanent facility. Do we not have the slide? That's it, huh? Okay.
That's all right. We did see the facility a few weeks ago on our tour. And
so you're familiar with what we're talking about?
I saw them off to the side. And do they have a sense of, I mean, construction's never done when you think it's going to get done. And
yeah.
That's probably evident in their lease extension. Do we have an idea when they might move out? Or
you bet. Yeah. So they're expecting to be out by the end of January.
Okay.
And so that's what this extension is going to, January 31st of next year. Okay. They may go longer, and this lease contemplates that. It does increase the lease rate significantly to encourage them to button things up. But anyway, so since we don't have any of this, like to go into a little bit of the background of where we've been, so you understand why we need to do this. So it has been, like I said, for almost 2 years. January 2016 is when we started. They've been seeking to construct their permanent facility. I'm sure, are aware that they had quite an extensive site location process, and they ended up with where they're currently constructing. And like I said, they expect to be done by the end of January 2019 and have all of their facilities out of Warm Springs and into the new one. Let's see. Since then, we've been in negotiation. One of the questions that may be asked, this lease expired in May. So you can see there's been some months that they've been going month to month, and that was contemplated in that initial lease. This, like some of our other properties, is FTA funded property, and therefore we needed to get their approval for this extension, which we have received. And then we're working out some of the terms, the other terms of improvements to our facility that Stadler will put into place. So anyway, there will be some improvements to our facility. I won't go into a whole lot of detail, but it will be better for our folks. The lease rate going forward will be $16,940 per month until the end of January. If they stay after that, then it doubles to $33,880 a month. Anyway, are there any other questions? The staff recommends that we approve the resolution. There is one more note, is that in the resolution there is one error, is that the value of the contract is actually $135,520. So that when you do make the motion, that amendment needs to be mentioned, please. Any questions?
Is there a so there is some motivation for them probably to be done by January. Is there a time when sort of internally, like your children that move into the house, you want them out of there kind of thing? I mean, obviously we're glad to have a manufacturer that does rail and things in the market.
It's very exciting to have a rail manufacturer in Utah.
Yeah.
Vehicle. So we are anxious to get them out. We have designs on that area. The maintenance folks there at Commuter Rail are anxious to get in there, but we're able to be somewhat flexible.
A few months doesn't
yeah.
matter too much.
So I think they are motivated with the terms of this contract to get done as soon as they can.
Questions?
Paul, I just had a quick question. When we negotiated that, and they are obligated now, as I understand it, to do improvements, and those will be completed prior to their move out. Is that correct? I just want to confirm that. Okay.
That's anticipated, correct?
Thank you.
Well, no comments. So I'll entertain a motion and just remind of the correction that needs to be in that resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a motion to approve the resolution R 2007-06, authorizing execution of the contract amendment with Stadler U.S. Incorporated for an extension of the lease agreement in Warm Springs. And just note that the motion to approve includes the amended value of the lease agreement, which is $135,520, and it is not the original amount that was noted in the draft.
Second. We'll ask for a roll call.
Trustee Holbrook? Aye. Chair Christensen?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thanks. Our next item, bring Eddie back for a revenue contract in regards to 7200 South Bridge and an agreement, I guess, with UDOT.
Yeah, so the description and purpose, 7200 South signal system upgrade due to the 7200 South Tracks Bridge replacement with UDOT, 100% to be reimbursed by UDOT. So these are my favorite types of contracts to bring to you.
Yeah, good deal.
Yeah, so the total contract amount is $729,934. So it's just a little background. As a part of UDOT's 7200 South lane drop project, They'll be replacing the West Tracks Bridge that crosses over 7200 South. This $729,934 will be used to add a switch, a crossover, and the associated overhead catenary system on the north and south side of the bridge. This will allow the tracks trains to switch over to the East Bridge while the West Bridge is being replaced. The contractor doing the UTA work is Stacy and Whitbeck, and is being done as a task order under our on-call contract.
Is it, if I remember right, and this really dates me, it seemed like that crossover was not there or manual or something. I don't know, it seemed like at one time there was a problem there. Does this, I guess, improve the operations at that location?
Yes, it'll be improving the operations on both sides.
Any other questions?
Eddie, I just had a quick question about how long do they anticipate that would take them to get that all completed?
It's a great question. Let's bring up the expert.
You didn't think you get
he's
the
way in the
Yeah.
back.
Okay,
Greg Thorpe is our project manager on this project, so he can have all the details.
So we've completed the track work now. Took 5 weekend shutdowns to do that work. Now we have in 2019 to complete the OCS and signaling work. That'll be completed by March, and then at that time UDOT can tear down the bridge. And that's going to take them till about August to tear it down. And then we will replace our track and OCS system on the new bridge. So we'll be done sometime in September.
Thank you.
thanks. Well, with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve this revenue contract.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this revenue contract for the 7200 South Bridge with UDOT. That's all, thanks.
Second, ask for a roll call.
Trustee Hillbrook?
Aye.
Chair Christensen?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 11 in our agenda, which is a discussion or information on pre-procurements. And I'd like you synchronized the train whistle to go with it.
I'm going to just wait. One more. Maybe. Okay. I'll start and yeah.
You should have been nicer to
You were
that
right the first time.
So the intent here for the board and the public is to give information on projects that are entering the procurement process, that give a heads up as to items that they'll be seeing in the future after we move through the procurement process and bring this forward as a contract. So this work we're talking about today is for some ultrasonic testing on the commuter rail and light rail lines, and that's required by Federal Railroad Administration. And that tests the rail and looks for any voids or cracks or deficiencies in that rail system. So we do that on a regular basis, looking for those internal and external flaws in the rail. So we anticipate a contract amount of $300,000.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Our next item is a discussion about an interlocal agreement that's been in the process of having been negotiated and with Salt Lake City in regards to some enhanced services that they would like UTA to provide. Nicole?
There we go. My name's Nicole Bordeaux. I am the Vice President of External Affairs here at UTA. And as you said, it's been negotiated for a long time, but I do want to say this is a long time coming for Salt Lake City and UTA. I think, Carlton, you worked on the Transit Master Plan when you were on the council. I think some of our staff has worked on it for a long time. So it's very exciting for UTA, very exciting for Salt Lake City, and we are in our final position right now. So today I just want to give everyone a little bit of update of where we are and set the tone for the next couple of months, really. In front of you or on the screen, you see a bunch of lines. So you see the red lines, that's the funded, and then it says unfunded. So in the Transit Master Plan that we worked with, in an effort to increase our service with UTA and Salt Lake City, there were some prioritized routes or lines across Salt Lake City. And as you see, there's some red and some green. So as we work on this ILA, Salt Lake City and UTA has looked at these routes being prioritized through a 20-year agreement. So that 20-year agreement is looking at increased mobility, improved frequency. So you'll hear us talk about frequent transit network or our core routes. That's improving service 15 minutes or better Monday through Friday, and then looking at Saturday and Sunday service at 30 minutes or better. Access to opportunity, and we'll talk about some more of this a little bit further in there. And looking at an agreement that's long-term to really solidify access and more frequent service. So we're going to talk about our first addendum, what looks at those red lines, but the agreement really solidifies an ongoing incorporation of all of these kind of routes long-term. So I'm going to hit some deal points that are in the ILA, but you can ask me questions further on. It looks at 20 years. It looks at these corridors, 6 North, 2nd South, 9th South, 21st South, 4th South, and 10th North. We would be looking at our initial phase 1 funded in August of 2019 change day. That's about 636 miles of new service to the ground, frequented service, I should say, added service. We were looking at a 12-month termination notice. We wouldn't want UTA or Salt Lake City to have a time that if they couldn't fund it due to whatever issues or we needed to get service discontinued. Some of the other things that are really important are performance assessment. So how do we see success on some of these routes? What are we looking at? And we've talked about coverage and frequency. If you look at that 9 route, it's long and it does a lot of coverage. And right now it doesn't hit what we would say has high frequency, like a lot of ridership. So we'll be looking at things like air quality, ridership, transit experience, connectivity, access to opportunities. And this one gets me all emotional because you're bringing so many people on the west side and connecting them back into downtown, into the university, to their schools. And this is really a great a value to Salt Lake City and to us, and really bringing that frequency along. So those are some of the performance measurements that are going into this agreement that really that we both hold as a value at UTA and as at Salt Lake City. So to think about how we do this methodology, it was complex, and I have to thank Bob and Steve and our Salt Lake City bus unit. They did amazing. They were sitting there with us working through how we can look at putting this 20-year agreement that we could increase service every phase along the way. We looked at a methodology that we can implement, and what does it look like using our national transit database. And there's some blank sheets in there that we can talk about how we're looking at our service, how many miles that we're implementing, and how we calculate inflation and things like that. And we'll come back with the calculator that you'll see when we bring the final resolution and draft to you. We had to look at a 10% paratransit. So as we increase our service, we have to also provide that paratransit need as well. And then we didn't, one of the discussions is you don't want to start a whole new transit agency. So we looked at what is the adequate administrative cost to Salt Lake City, making sure that we can still pay for insurance, we can still pay for finance and planning, but also they don't need a new me or a new Steve, but they need to pay for a portion of that. So we looked at discounting those areas. So when you're, make sure I do this. So the next step, and I have to use, I can't even see the board up there, but let me use my thing. So it's pretty complicated. You'll get a master agreement, and then you'll have these Exhibit A addendums templates, and each one will have a mobilization piece, and that's if we start new phases. So the first phase is the 2nd South, the 21st, and the 9th South, and that's to get us startup costs, say our new capital, which they're paying for, how do we start training, getting ready for it. So the next agreement you'll see in January will have those ramp up costs, have those numbers ready, and we'll start getting that funding as soon as January so we can implement that service August 2019. So that'll be the addendum. I can't see what number that is in there. I think it's B. And then we're looking at then implementation of service, and that's a separate agreement that we'll be working with Salt Lake City. That's the ongoing of the phase that we implement. And then, it's addendum 1 is the mobilization, I'm sorry, and addendum 2 would be the capital costs. So other things that would come along with this with Salt Lake City's agreement is bus stop improvements. Some of this they can do internally and look to just pay for it themselves. They've received money from the city council to do that for this first go around. Others could be as simple as we need restrooms for our bus operators, and if we're extending service, where do they do that? So these are all of the kind of things that we're working through as we implement that service. And some of that we may be putting those the restrooms in, or they may also be helping us do that. And then also branding pieces, and those things will come later. So here's all of the attachments that you see in blank form in the ILA today. They'll be attached. And then coming forward, the City Council will be holding a public hearing on December 4th. They will also be reviewing the ILA, and the final numbers will be coming back to you as well on December 11th with that final information. December 12th, excuse me. Salt Lake City will be looking at it December 11th for a public hearing and a final adoption, and we would be coming back to you for a final adoption on December 12th. That would include the final numbers on the mobilization, and for the service for 2019, the final adoption would be with Salt Lake City in their budget season, mid-June, around the 19th or 20th. That's a lot, but we can come back and do some more presentations on the meat.
I don't know if you can go back to the map at all. This is really more just, I think I understand it, but the question, comment came in the public comment about sort of the east-west versus north-south, and particularly Redwood and State.
It's great.
And I notice a little bit of it is on Redwood, and obviously, the city is compensating us for these enhancements. Do you know sort of how they picked? I mean, and this was really, I have to give my successors either the credit or the blame, for the transit plan. They really finished it way after I left. But do you know why the reason between sort of the east-west? I think I know, but I just wondered, did they express that to you, or are we just responding?
No, it's actually in the transit master plan. Some of the things they wanted that were important. One were all local routes, and also knowing that and hoping at the time as we were working through the ILA that the Salt Lake County Force to help with the regional routes. So if you look, and most of our regional routes at UTA run north-south. So we have a north-south Redwood Road route, State Street. They do. The Foothill route would be a regional route, but we've discussed that in their final conversation. But it was really important for the first area of funding to do the east-west routes. One, they aren't high propensity and productivity for us. But two, there's other funding sources to help with that regional route funding versus the east-west.
And I take it, and maybe Steve, you can answer, either one of you, the sort of the regional route and what we do with the fourth quarter, that discussion's still to come, really. I mean, we don't even begin to collect till July of next year, but I don't, has that discussion, that's not been finalized in any way.
Just in its early stages, so there's going to be a whole range of public meetings and speaking with all the different communities within Salt Lake County to see what their priorities are.
And I imagine the advisory board will have a role in that.
Absolutely. So it's actually listed in the ILA that the funding around the fourth quarter works together with this and doesn't stop UTA from making the adjustments that they need as well. And so thinking about our planning for the fourth quarter, it's just beginning with meeting with Salt Lake County. We're meeting with engaging on our frequency, and then working in conjunction with our MPOs and how that integrates into the big planning, which our advisory board would see through this process.
Any other questions?
Nicole, I just had a question, just a clarification. I wanted to understand again, Salt Lake City is putting this on their public hearing comment period for their, what was the date again?
Technically, it was on there yesterday.
Okay.
But they didn't receive, we were still in some negotiations on the ILA, so they didn't have the hard copy ILA, but the next meeting is on December 4th. And so I think the December 4th meeting will have the public hearing, and then again, they'll keep it open for December 11th with the adoption that evening.
Thanks. I appreciate the clarification.
Mm-hmm.
The ILA will be available on our website, won't it? With the discussion in minutes from today's meeting at least, right?
And then we'll have it open with the resolution for adoption. Yeah.
Okay.
So to clarify, we're accepting comments on the ILA as well on our side?
We can. We haven't. We wouldn't do that until it's adopted. Generally, yeah, until it was posted for resolution. So whenever it, so that would be December 12th at your next meeting. Yes, it would be posted. You would accept those comments, and then you would decide if you were going to adopt it or not.
Thank you.
So yes.
Any other questions? No, this was information only, so we'll look both to their action and subsequently our potential action on December 12th. Thank you for your work on it and the rest of the staff.
Thanks.
Our next item is a closed session item to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation, and I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we go into closed session regarding pending or reasonably imminent litigation.
I'll second that. Do we have to do this vote? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm aye. And so we'll go into closed session. For those who haven't been asked to stay, we'll excuse you, and then we'll be back when we're done. business. I have down our next meeting scheduled for December 12th, 2018. I don't have any other business unless...
Do we have a time? Or are we going to just say the time out loud?
I don't know that we've totally figured out a time. I think 2:30.
2:30.
2:30, sorry. Yes, thank you. Okay. Anyway, if there are no other items, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we move to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
And our meeting stands adjourned. Thank you, everybody.